thanks for joining me today. I am doing a voiceover as I colour so that I can talk you through the process, and I hope you pick up a few tips. As you can see, I have started by colouring in Tilda's cheeks, and I like to lay down a layer of colour first, my lightest colour, which in this instance is E000. And this is just to get the paper wet so that I can lay my darker colours on top. I use a flicking motion, but you can use whatever is best for you. I don't go over the whole area to begin with, and mainly only I work towards colouring towards my lightest area. So I'm coming in now with E01, and I'm just starting to add my depth and my shading so that I can start forming the shape of her cheeks and her chin. I like to have it quite round, and so I'll go quite dark in these areas, as you see as we build up the ink. Clearly when you're using a light coloured, when you stamp with a light coloured ink, I'm a little bit more careful to try not to go over the lines because I don't have that black line to help, I guess, take away the dithering or the blending of the marker itself. So now I am using R20 to add a little bit of pink to her cheeks. And I'm just going over that again, R20 again, and I'm just flicking that out. So now I wanted it to be a little bit darker, so I'm coming in with, I believe it is R32. And I haven't gone right to the edge because otherwise it'll bleed, so I've just gone in from a little bit from the edge, and now I've come in with my R20 just to blend that out, and I'm just sort of blotting it. I'm not trying to do any major blending. I'm just trying to make it soak into the paper a little bit. So I'm doing the same on the other side. You'll be able to see this side better. And again, you can see I'm just sort of blotting it just to make it sort of soak into the paper. There we go. Okay, so now I'm coming in with my darker skin tone, and this is E11. And I'm just going over everything, or just over the darker areas that I want. Sorry, I see now that I need to change the way that I do my videoing. I've got a bit of a headshot there. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm blending all those colours out with my E01, which isn't my lightest. My medium lightest. If I went in with my lightest, it would actually start picking up the darker ink because it's just too light compared to the others. And now I've got my E11 again, and I'm adding some shading to her hair, or just to her face under her hair. Now I've come in with my darkest shadow, which is E25, and I know it might seem crazy at the moment, but once her hair is all done and everything like that, it'll all make sense. And this will get blended out with E11. Oh, there's my hair again. So now I will come in with E01 and I will blend that out a little bit further. So I'm just bringing that down so it doesn't look so stark. Okay, so I'm coming in with E00 and I'm just going over all the light area, and you can see I'm just sort of flicking down into that dark area, but I'm not going all the way over it. And to help blend it, and so that's quite wet now, so what I'm going to do is flick in my E01 so that I get a nice smooth transition between the colours. Still not dark enough for me, so I'm coming back in with E11. I use a good paper, which helps you to, keep on adding all these layers, but you could stop at this point if you find that your ink's sitting on the surface. But I am going for just a little bit darker so I can get that little bit more round effect. You'll see that there's a big difference once I add in the neck, just how much this face will pop. Okay, so I'm going to come in now with E01 over the top just to blend that towards my highlight. Now with E00. It looks like I'm happy at this point. Okay, so I think I've just used E01 here because I don't need the E00. I don't need it to be that light because it's all going to be in shadow anyway. And I've gone straight for the E25 because that will blend out with the E11. So it's going to look stark at the moment, but when the E11 will actually push that ink because it's so much lighter. You watch. So you see how it's pushing that dark ink up against her jaw or her chin. And that looks better. Okay, that's right. I thought it was a little bit too brown, so I've added a little bit of pink in here. So I think that was E32 because the E20 would have been too light. So that's the E25 just over the top. And it's amazing how you can warm things up just by adding just a little bit of colour. A little bit of red just to warm it up. So now that was E11 over the top. As you can see, I always turn to the direction that I favour the most. I always find for me it's easier for me to flick the marker towards myself, so I'll turn my image around for that. You might find that it's easier for you to flick away from yourself. So I recommend just practicing and seeing which one comes natural, which one feels the most comfortable. So I started with E00 just to wet the base again, just for my base, so that I've got the paper a little bit wet before I put my next colours down. And then that was E01 over the top. And now I'm just coming in with E11 to add some shading. you'll see that I'm very, very light. I'm using just the very tip. Now I'm doing E25, just a little bit of a shadow around the hand where I think that the other hand will be blocking the light. And then just blending that out a little bit with E11. Don't want it to get too dark. You see, it's a very slow process. It's all about just building the layer and building the layer. Oh, we have a head in the way again. Please excuse that. And so I've made the shadow under her sleeve a little bit starker, and just so that it really stands out, because I don't want it to be too much of a smooth transition. And that's E01 coming in. And E00, and because E00 will pull back some of the ink, I just wet the whole area and then I come back in with E01. Oh no, I'm still not happy with the depth yet, so I've come back in with E11. I think I must have felt that the E00 might have pulled off too much of the colour for me. That's the problem with using the very light colours. If you put them over the top of your dark colours, they actually take away some of that depth that you've created. So I think I've decided to start with E01 on this side. And you'll see how I've left the white highlight to the left of her arm there, so that I can help distinguish between both hands at the bottom. You'll see as I add the colour, as I continue to add depth, you'll see how important that is. Because if I just added a great big shadow, if I added that right up against and butted that right up against the other one, that colour, the E11, it would be harder to distinguish between the two, and it would create like a blob, I guess. And there we have my wonderful head once again. See, I'm concentrating, getting right in there to see what I'm doing. Okay, again, I'm using just the very tip because I'm going to use the E11 to blend it. Just want to get the colour there, just enough so that I can get that extra depth. Now you'll notice that I didn't put it at the bottom, and that's because I wanted to make sure that the other hand looks as though it's further away. And then the top hand. If I put the dark one down at the bottom, it would look at the same depth overall, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm coming back in with E01 and I'm just blending out that E11. Now I'm coming in, now that I've got a couple of layers of that E11, so I'm now going over that highlighted area with the E01 because it's still just enough, still light enough just to keep it separated. Felt like the EOO took off too much colour, so I've just flicked back in with the EO1. Okay, onto the toes I think I started. Oh, we have a head in the way again. It's concentrating. Sorry about that. I'll figure it out in a minute. Okay, what I'm actually doing is just going around the base trying to decide where the toes are. Okay, you can see the result. Sorry, you couldn't see the process. So that was just EOO just so that I could get an idea. Sometimes it's hard to know until you've actually got some ink down. I think I'm coming in with E11 by the looks here. It's a bit dark for EO1. Because it's a small area, I'm sort of doing the darker areas because I don't need to lay too much ink down. Sometimes I don't really know what I'm going to do until I start. So I wasn't actually too happy with how the toes worked out, but I'd know how I'd do them different next time. Okay, so I'm just adding a little bit extra depth with E25 here. And again, you can see that I'm only just touching just so I can get a little bit of that colour down, and then I'm going to blend it later. Alright, so I've got EO1 here that I'm blending with. Probably should have gone in with E11 for that dark brown. I really didn't plan those toes too well. And I think I realise that now. Oh, there we go, I've come in with E11 and I've decided, yeah, that's what I did. I've decided to start shading them a little bit more to the... Oh no, I still haven't done that yet by the looks. Here you go. So you can see, it's really just, and you do the same when you do this, it's a work in process, or progress, whatever the word I'm looking for. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think I coloured these all in and I went, no, they don't look like toes. They look like blobs. And you'll see that sometimes you just don't know until you colour it in that you need to go back and just fix it a bit. So here we go. So I think I started to round them a bit more here. There we go. That looks better. Yes. So by separating them a little bit like that, with just a little bit of shading, they look a little bit more rounded like toes. Still not great, but hey, what can you do? Alright. How long did that take? 5 minutes to do some toes, and I think I'm still going. Alright. It's all about the details. Come on, move on, Zoe. Alright. Okay, hopefully I'm happy with this now. Yay! We're going to start on some knees. Okay. So what I generally like to do is start forming the shape of my knee and where I think the shadow of the knee is going to be. And here I've got E01 by the looks. So I've come in with E11 now. I hope you like my fluffy hair just hanging in the corner there. Okay, so just starting to form the shape. E01 here. Now I'm just adding a little bit more depth with the E25. And using E11 just to blend that a little bit. So I'm just using E01 to blend it out, and you can see I've just left a tiny little bit for my highlight. E11 here, back to E01, and it's just layer upon layer, just continuing to build it, and each time you add a little bit or add another layer, you're adding more depth. So I've just come in with E00, and I'll come in now whilst that's wet. As you can see how it's taken away some of the darker colour. So I'll come in with E01 just to flick over the top and make that a really nice smooth transition. I'm just cleaning up the edge there. And that's one leg done. With no wonky toes. Alright, so I'm doing the same on the other leg. The knee's hidden by the bucket, so we don't have to worry about that too much. Excuse my head in the way again. I realised that some of her leg was hiding behind the seashells. Blending back out of E11, no, E01. And then I've got E triple O there just to fill in that last bit. And EO1 to go back over just to make it all nice and smooth. And that is my little secret. That is what makes it smooth. And E25 just to add some shadow under the dress. E11. E01. Okay, so I'm going to start with a BO2 and just very lightly adding in some colour. This is sort of my medium colour, it's going to be my main colour, but I do actually have two darker shades for this. I'm just slowly adding colour just to start forming the shape of the shoes, or the thongs. We call them thongs here in Australia, and they're called flip-flops elsewhere. Of course us Aussies have to call them thongs. Okay, so now I'm coming in with B16 just to add a little bit of extra depth. And there we go. We have a head in the way. I'm very sorry. This is what happens when you're very concentrating. Oh, that's a great view. Alright, here we go. So you can see I was adding some of the B16 just under the toes. I didn't realise it was this bad, guys. I'm so sorry. Alright, so I've added a little bit of shading. Okay. So now I would assume I'm going to come back in with BO2. Yes, and I'm going to just blend that out a little bit. But I don't want to go all the way over my highlight because I do have a lighter colour. I'm going to have to just imagine what I'm doing, which is pretty much the same as everywhere else. Okay. Now that's a little bit more of B16 just to help form the roundness of the thongs. And then so that is now B0, and I'm just going over everything. Very, very light touch. I'm just using the very tip, just enough to get the ink down. It's such a small area, so you don't want to be too heavy-handed. And I won't be happy with that blend, so I've come back with BO2 there. Okay, so I'm starting by laying down B0. And you'll notice how I haven't gone right to the edge of the sleeve. That's because I'm going to bring my dark colour in a little bit from the edge so that I can leave a highlight around the edge, which will help to separate it from the dress underneath. So now I'm coming in with B02. And again, I'm sorry that my hair's hanging out in the corner there. And now this is B39. I'm blending that out with B02. Actually, I think that was B16. Please forgive me. Okay, so now we're back in with B0. And we're going over the whole area. And can you see how, being such a light colour, it actually seems to like pick up the other colour or spread it? So that's why it's going to come back in now with B16. I'm still leaving the highlight around the edge. So that helps to bring the colour back in. So now I'm going to the other sleeve, it's B0. And then I'll use B16 again. But you see how you can still see the line underneath? So each time you add another layer, even if it's the same colour, you do get that little bit extra depth. Okay, so I'm going to start on the dress part now. And this is where I've brought in the B39. Start getting the dark area, and because I'm working in such a small space, I'm actually starting with my darkest colour because I'm not going to have a lot of room to move the ink around. So if I layer it too much, then I'll end up getting too much bleeding. Just going over that again to make sure it's nice and dark. I'm coming in with B16. Actually, I think that might have, now I'm in with B16, that was B02 just before that. You can see I'm just using the tip. And that will be B02. Okay, so starting with BO2, I'm going to start working out how I'm going to form the pleats of the dress. I'm never really sure until I start, so I just sort of go with the flow. Just keep it slow and steady. There's no hurry. I'm leaving a little bit of a highlight at the top of that pleat just to help separate it from the dress above. You can see I've also left a bit of an edge around the sleeve. It'll all get filled in later as I build the layers. Now I'm coming with B16. I'm really still not sure at this point. I have an idea, but I'm just slowly forming the shape, and I don't always know exactly what I'm going to do until closer to the end, as I continue to build the shades, or build each layer. So I don't even know how I'm going to join the top and the bottom at this stage. So it sort of just comes together. So I'm just going to extend that colour now and just flick it out with my BO2. So I've decided that I'm just going to pull that all the way up. And you'll notice how I'm always flicking the same direction. I'm not like going in a different direction, like opposite, well, horizontal to it or whatever. I'm always try to keep the flick in the same direction, and that keeps it all together. Well, it keeps it smoother. I'm still using BO2. Sorry, my head's in the way. Okay. So I'm coming in with a darker colour here. This is B16. I wasn't happy with how it was looking, so I needed to add some more depth and some more shadows. You see I haven't gone over those white highlights yet. over a little bit of the highlight with my BO2, and that helps to make that whole area look like it's in shadow. But I still haven't gone over the highlight at the top because I'm going to put my lightest colour over the top. Still not quite dark enough, so I'm just coming back in with B16. And that helps to show that her dress, her hands or her arms up are against her dress, giving it that little bit of a curve there. So I'm just creating a cast shadow under her arm there. And that's with B16 now. And because it's a cast shadow, you don't need to blend that line out too much. Or at all, really. And so I'll have come in with B39 here, just to make sure that that cast shadow is nice and deep. Now I'm just filling in that highlight with B0. I just realised I was missing a bit of shadow under the sleeve at the top there, so I fixed that up. Okay, so now I've got B39 and I'm adding some shadow from the arms into her dress in the centre there. And you'll see that I'm not doing it all the way around. Like I'm not doing like a great big line all the way up her arm. And this helps just a little to show that her arm is not all the same distance away from her dress, if that makes sense. Some of it will be closer to the dress and some of it will be further away. So I'm just blending that out with B16. Now that's B02. I'm just blending it all. Paper's starting to get a little bit saturated, oversaturated in some areas, so I have to be careful now. Okay, so now we're finally adding in the highlights. That was BO, and BO at the top here. You could leave it white if you wanted to. I decided I just wanted a little bit more of a shadow next to the sleeve there. And now starting on a headband, and I'm starting with BO2. It's really just a repeat of all the methods over and over again. And I guess it's just practice about imagining where you want your shading to be and where you think the light is hitting, and how are you exactly going to form the shape of the 3D, or to make the 2D look 3D. I always seem to struggle with bows and ties and stuff, so certain areas I always need to practice, I need more practice on, and over time you start to get a knack for what you're doing, and you pick up your own ideas. And so I'm coming in now. I think that's B39. It could be, no, I think it's B39, because I'm adding just a small amount, and then I'm going to blend this out with B16. Yep, there's the B16. You can see that there's a lot of areas around that knot where it could turn into a blob if you're not careful. And you see how where the tie of the knot, I've left that highlight just above it before, so that it'll be able to separate it from the tie. And as I build it up, I make sure that there's enough of a highlight to help separate it. So I'm coming in now with the BO2 and just blending all that out. I'm coming in now with my lightest colour, the B0. And I'm just going over all those highlights. And because it's going to pull some of the other ink, I'll probably come back in with the B02 in some areas just to flick over the top. Yep, so I'm just flicking over the top with the B02 now. Just to make that a nice smooth transition. Okay, so we're going to start forming the shape of the hair, and with the magnolia hair, now that these cute little curly sort of areas where it's folds, I like to try and create the darker area on the underside and keep the lighter side on the top to try and keep those rounded, sort of form the rounded shape of the hair. I'm starting here with Y23 and I'm giving her like a golden yellow hair, not natural or anything, just so it's a nice contrast to the blue. Yeah, as you can see, I'm just sort of starting to form the underside of that sort of wave. Never have any big plans or anything before I start. I sort of go with the flow. Sorry that my thumb's in the way there. Okay, so I'm just coming in with, I believe this is Y28. It's a bit of a murky, bit of a dirty yellow. But I'm going to come in with YR24 to make it a little bit more golden later. So I'm just slowly building the depth. So now I'm bringing in Y26 and just blending out the Y28 a little. And as I do, it fills in more of the white area. And I'm sorry that my hand is in the way here. That's annoying. But hopefully you get the gist of what I'm doing. Hopefully I move my hand soon. That's a bit better. So I don't have any like major, any sort of formula that I go by. I just slowly build it up, and as it comes together, I'll make changes and hope that it improves. So now I think this is Y23 again. You see I'm just doing all small flicks and I keep on going over and over the same area, and it's slowly just, well, I keep on going over the same area and I leave I take a little bit more of the white space, and each time I go over that it just creates a bit more texture and a bit more depth. So now I'm coming in with the YR24. And I'm blending that out with the Y26. You see how it's starting to form the shape of those waves in her hair? But I'm also careful not to blend it too much that I lose the texture or lose the strands of hair, I guess. So now I'm going over the highlight with E50. And this helps to show me if there's any areas that I need to touch up. Sometimes personally I just don't always know exactly what it's going to look like until I filled it all in. So now I'm going to stand back and have a look at it. What do I need to do? And I feel like it's too light there, so I've come in with the Y23 just to add a little bit more depth. I'm not liking how those little swirls of hair are looking at the bottom, so I'm just seeing what I can do to try and fix it up. See how they kind of all look like they're all just one great big blob? So I'm trying to see what I can do to tidy them up. So I came in with YR24 and now I'm just blending that out with the Y26. Still playing around with it, not entirely happy. Thought that was probably getting a little bit too light in there, so I've just come in with Y28. A bit sad that I did actually, I don't really like it, so that's right, I remember I didn't like it at the time. So that was Y23 there, and I was trying to sort of make it a bit more yellow. Didn't work, so I've come in with YR24 to give it a bit more golden. Now I'm just adding a bit more depth using the Y24, a bit more texture. You see that because I don't have any exact plan when I start, I have to keep on building the layers. Keep playing with it till I'm happy. Still don't like those strands at the bottom, but oh well. So that's Y23 there. I'm just blending out the YR24. Starting to look a bit better. I think I've decided to move on to the other side now. So I pretty much continued the process on the other side. So again, I'm just laying down the Y23. Now I've come straight in with the YR24 on this side. feeling a bit more confident with that colour. You see how I flick some streaks down to help give the impression that there's strands of hair. I'm blending that out now with the Y26. When I say blending, I guess I'm not really blending, I'm just extending it to get my next layer or my next gradient. So now I'm just back in with the Y23, and I've got to be careful not to go over the highlights too much. Now I'm coming in with the E50, just over the highlight areas. You see I've left that little bit on the side, so I'm going to just go over that now. I've got my Y23. I'm just making that a little bit darker, some areas. Yep, so I've just got my YR24 there. Thumb's got in the way again. I wanted a bit more shadow on the other side there, so I just put a touch of Y23 over that highlight. Alright, so let's start on the top of the hair. I'm just going up on the other side of the fringe, or the bangs that they're called elsewhere. And I've kept it dark using the YR24 because I'm going to have a highlight on the edge of the fringe to make it stand out. So I've just gone right over that with the Y23. Now I'm coming in with the Y26 because it's going to be in a bit of shadow from the bow. Alright, so starting at the top now, and I see that there's those sort of little bumps in her hair there, so I'm going to try and use those as my guide to create a little highlight at the top of each one. So I'm starting with the shadow using the YR24. Now I'm coming back in the opposite direction, and I'm going to leave like a zigzag to create my highlight. You see how I bring that in down the middle of the other side of the other flicks, and that creates my zigzag appearance. And do the same on this side. And see how I brought the flick around the outside of that, and then I'm going to just bring that one up to create my zigzag. Sometimes I don't do it too well. I don't think enough ahead. Alright, so I've come back in now with the Y23 just to blend that out a bit without going through all the way over. And do that on the other side too. Whoops, I'm a little bit out of view there, sorry. No, just come back in with the YR24. Hopefully I realise that I'm out of view in a minute. I just darkened up a few areas. Oh, I've noticed. I went, oh. Alright, so I've just come in now going over those highlights with the E50. And of course, if you wanted to, you could leave them white. It's just my personal preference. If I'm doing black, I tend to leave it white. But other colours, I usually put a very light colour just over the top. Okay, so I'm coming back in again with my YR24, and as you can see, each time I do, it just makes it that little bit darker. I don't always go straight over the whole section, which helps to create the layered effect of depth. And as you see now, that's darker at the top, so I'm going to end up bringing that all the way through the rest of the hair. But I'm starting first with her fringe, and I've gone straight for the YR24 because I haven't got a lot of area that I'm working in. And I'm going to, as I lay this down and when I bring my next colour in, I'll be slowly working towards the highlight. And I just make it up as I go. I use the lines to help that the artist has drawn, Pauline. Sorry that my thumb just gets in the way there. And don't forget that it's all about your interpretation. You don't have to colour it exactly the same way I've done it or the way someone else has done it. As you colour, you'll see it differently. Alright, so I'm coming in now with the Y26. I'm just going over what I've already done, slowly filling in the white areas. Now I've got the Y23, and again I'm just sort of going over, I'm not going all the way over the white areas yet. I'm going to do that with the E50. I'm going over some of them that I think will be in shadow, or not quite as bright. It's all just guesswork. I really have no idea what I'm doing either. I'm still learning about shadows and highlights, and it's all just practice and observing around you. I don't know about you, but I often find myself looking at people's clothing and seeing how the light is landing and the way that it creases and the shadows it creates. Alright, so I'm coming back with a little bit of detail now and adding some YR24. So I lost a bit of it when I started adding my lighter colours. And this is what helps give it the texture. And often it's not until now that you see exactly where you want to put that extra depth. So, and this won't get blended out, it'll just stay as is. And so now I'm going to just add some depth all over her hair, or some texture. This is really light flicks. Decided that I wanted to add some strands through the highlights, so I'm doing that now, and it's such a light touch, just enough to see it. You could also do this stage with a pencil, with a really nice sharp pencil, and it's probably a bit easier, and especially if you've got lots of layers of ink, because I can even see here that some of the ink is starting to sit on top of the paper here. You can see how it sort of helps to get that shape back. You don't want to do too much. It's starting to look better. Okay, so now let's do the bucket and the shells. So the bucket, I simply did this with W3 and W1. I had contemplated putting a colour over the top, but in the end I decided not to. So I've only just used, so I used W3 first just to start forming the roundness, and now I'm just using W1 to blend that out. And I'm just doing around the rim at the moment. That's W3 again. Around the base, and you see I left just a little touch of white to help separate it. Now I'm just adding extra depth just above there, just to make sure that that is separated from the bottom of the bucket and also under the rim. So it's just W3 again. And then I'll come back in with W1 to blend that out. Keep it nice and smooth. You see that I generally always flick in the same direction. I try to. This helps to keep everything smooth and look consistent. For example, if I started colouring up and down on the main part of that bucket now, it would look wrong. You'd start getting lines in it, and you'd lose that nice smooth gradient that's formed there. So I think I'm trying to pick colours for the seashells now. I didn't think this through too well. I'm not really happy how they turned out. And they're so small. I should have stamped, I really made a mistake, and I should have stamped a black version of her so that I could get a really good image or vision of the way that the shells looked. So I'm not really going to make any advice here. All I did was colour them and then try to add a shadow underneath them to try and separate them. And I've just used, I think here I used R20 and R11 for the pink seashells. But yeah. In that instance, I was just hoping that the R11 would pick up some of the darker ink. When it dries, it should dry a little bit lighter. And now I'm trying purple, and my ink's running out on this one, so I sneakily get another one. I don't remember, I think this is VO2. I was a bit annoyed. I should have tested it first. It's always the way though. Alright, so I actually I don't quite remember what purple I went to then. But would have just been a straight violet. Then I used a BV here. BV93 or something, to just add a little bit of shadow, and then I've took that over to the other side as well. Oh, I started on this shell and then I went over it with, I think it might have been, I'm not sure what V that is. Sorry. I always seem to like yellow with purple. It's one of those two colours that seem to go nice together. Just realised I shouldn't have coloured that little bit there. That should have been background, but oh well. You don't always see these things. Right, so now I think I'm going to add some shadow. Yes, I think I'm using CO4. I'm just trying to separate the shells with a bit of shading, and then I come in with CO2. I'm just dabbing it really. Could have been better. Should have been better prepared for that one. Alright, well now I'm just coming in with a very sharp brown pencil. I usually like to use brown rather than black, except it seems to be a little bit dark for this one. Anyway, it might have been better to go with a lighter brown, considering she's got the light yellow hair. And I don't normally use a white opaque pen, but I thought that because her ribbon in her hair had dots on it, that I'd come in with the white opaque pen and add a few dots. And then I thought I would add the white dots to her cheeks, which is alright, but it's not usually my style. But hey, I had to try something different. Add a bit of a highlight to those shells that I wasn't happy with. Well, there we go. So now I'm going to ground her. So I've just come in with W1, and generally what I like to do is go in all the same directions. So I'm just flicking out, and you can see that I'm just doing it horizontally, and I'm not trying to be perfect. I want it to sort of, I don't know how to explain it, I want it to sort of be separated and not be just one big blob. So that's why I've got just those small streaks. And then, as you saw then, I was just making sure that the horizontal rule was the same on both sides there. So now I could have left it there, but I decided to come in with some W3 just to add a little bit more of a shadow. And I didn't put much down because I'm just going to go over it with W1. I want to keep it reasonably light. You see that I keep on doing it all in the same direction. I'm not coming down, I'm not flicking down towards the bottom of the paper. It's always horizontal, because that's the way I started. If I had have started, well, I'd always do a ground horizontally, but that's just me. Anyway, that's it. She's finished. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you managed to pick up a few tips along the way. And of course, I'm going to have to leave you with my big squeezes, and I hope that you will join me again sometime. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now. Oh wait, there's more. Hi everyone, thanks for sticking around for that. It was long and drawn out, but hopefully you picked up a few tips along the way, and I thought the best thing I could do was to sit there and talk over it whilst I watched myself colour. I've been meaning for a few years to share my little green turkey with you, and I figured that after sitting through all that, then he might sing us a song. But we'll see, he's got a mind of his own, he's quite stubborn. So this is Pluto, and I've had him for over 8 years, and he's already saying hello, how you going? And he is a Quaker parrot, and he knows about 500 words, and he sings songs and does lots of things to make us laugh. And I guess you could say he's a bit like my baby. So we're going to see if he'll say something, but I don't know. He's feeling a little bit funny at the moment. Do you want to sing a song? Do you want to sing Super Colour? Or you want to sing Old MacDonald? I don't want to sing Old MacDonald right now. What about Super Colour? Do you want to do that one? You ready? Do you want to sing a song? You want to sing a song? You ready? Supercalifragilistic expialidocious. You say it again? You ready? Supercalifragilistic expialidocious. You gonna do it? Come on. You say it. You ready? Supercalifragilistic expialidocious. Yes, good boy. Have you got kisses? Mwah. Oh, I love you. I love you. Oh, I love you too. Yes. Yes. Have you got cuddles? Oh, you got your cuddles. Oh, I know you love your smooches, don't you? Yes, you do. Cuddles. Yes. And say bye-bye to everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.